Hey all, just want to do a little follow-up video from last week's video talking about the American presidency. Current events are moving at breakneck speed these days. Normally I don't do that many of these, but lately, there's been a fire hose of developments. So I wanted to come back, as I think I had promised in my last video, right? I want to come back and do sort of the postscript to that Wisconsin election. What was the result of that election? The high-stakes election, right, for control of that high court. I think I had told you guys on the last video that the spending on both sides combined was a new record of around $60 million. Guess what? It ended up, last I heard, right around $100 million. Money poured in at the last minute. Crazy, right? For a state Supreme Court race in Wisconsin. Over $100 million. What? The previous record was in the $50 million range. That was insane in Wisconsin 2 years ago. So, that was basically, right, the election. Technically, it was a guy named Schimmel, Republican, running against Susan Crawford, Democrat. And it ended up being Susan Crawford versus Elon Musk. Because Elon Musk, right, made a campaign appearance in Green Bay, Wisconsin last weekend. And Schimmel didn't even show up. Schimmel wasn't even there. It was basically Elon Musk versus Susan Crawford. And I don't know, is the result of that election in part because Musk made it all about him? Maybe. You don't want to read too much into a single election outcome, but you don't want to read too little into it either. Crawford won that election by 10 points. 10 points. 10 points in a state that's completely 50-50. Right? So Musk got utterly annihilated in Wisconsin. No matter how much he spent, and I think he spent north of $25 million, and he engaged in some fairly shady dealings, basically trying to incentivize people with the offer of money to vote for Schimmel. I mean, he finessed it a little more than that, but that's what it amounted to. If you vote for Schimmel, I might give you money. It's kind of ugly, but it all backfired. So if we were looking at this election as an early referendum on the Trump presidency, this would suggest the American voter is not super thrilled with what's been happening so far. Some of us are thrilled, but a lot are not. A lot are not thrilled. So an absolute annihilation for Elon Musk, Donald Trump, the Republican Party, and Democrats retain control of the Supreme Court in Wisconsin. I think they're going to have a congressional redistricting case they might be hearing in the next year or so. It's likely that if they hear that kind of a case, they will probably overturn the current lines, which have been heavily favorable for Republicans. Right? I think Wisconsin sends 8 representatives to the House. 6 of the 8 are Republican right now. In a 50-50 state where it should be, right, closer to 3-3, it's 6-2 because the lines are very GOP favorable. I think the court will likely strike those lines down and demand fairer, more equitable lines that might win Democrats a couple extra seats in Congress out of Wisconsin. Yeah. Not 3-3, 4-4. Yeah, so that's what Democrats are hoping for, is that they'll be able to win 4 House seats out of Wisconsin in 2026 and not 2, if those lines get challenged and struck down. That's pretty likely. And like I said, Democrats are already likely to win back the House regardless, but this might be a couple of seats right off the top out of Wisconsin. All right, so that's kind of the big news that I wanted to come back to. Right, 'cause I spoke to you last, it was before the election. So I think Democrats got everything they hoped for. They were beyond happy. Um, I think they were hoping for a narrow win and thought that likely, but it wasn't even that, right? It was a crush. So Democrats, I think Democrats needed some good news after the November election cycle. They needed some good news. I mean, you would say it, right? In the November election cycle, Democrats gained a seat in the House, but that wasn't enough to get control. They lost, I think, 3 seats in the Senate. That was a disaster for them. Might have been more than that. They had a terrible cycle in the Senate, and obviously they lost the White House to Donald Trump. So they needed a little positive news, right? They got it out of that state legislative race in Pennsylvania. They got it in that state legislative race in Iowa, and now they got the big win in Wisconsin. So Democrats are feeling better about themselves, figuring, yeah, November was brutal, but we're already making a nice little comeback. Let's keep it going. And Republicans, right, they're a little concerned right now. They're a little concerned. I think they see the writing on the wall. Probably they won't hold the House in 2026. But they want to minimize their losses, and they want to keep control of the Senate. And I think we also have some state races coming up in November of this year, because some states have off-year elections. I think, where is it? Maybe Virginia, maybe Pennsylvania, gubernatorial races, something like that. So that'll be another sort of thing to watch for in November. How do the Democratic candidates do? How do the Republican candidates do? All right, so there's that. But in some ways, maybe even bigger news. I don't know, because things are happening so quickly. So quickly. It's the curse of May. You live in interesting times. We live in very interesting times. I wish the times were not that interesting. I could do with some normal, boring politics being in the background. That's most of my life. That's how politics were. Mostly boring and in the background. Now it's in the foreground and it's endlessly interesting, much to my regret. So, right, Liberation Day yesterday, according to President Donald J. Trump. Liberation Day, which is a sort of a euphemism for a massive program of global tariffs that I don't think we've ever seen before. We've gone through some tariffy times in America, going back to the early 20th century, the early to mid 19th century. In both cases, when we went through those eras, it worked out extremely badly for us and the world. And this is cut number 3, 2025, on an even more dramatic scale. I'm not too confident about the long-term impact, but the short-term impact, right, is obvious. My God, anyone whose parents, let's say, were hoping to retire this year, those plans might be delayed. The stock market's in free fall. It's been doing poorly the last several weeks. It's doing a lot worse today. Investors are panicking, and maybe rightly so, right? Very few economists think that tariffs are a good idea in general, and certainly not at this level, and certainly not of this scope. So we are in it now, people. We are in it now with what is alleged to be Liberation Day. I suppose liberation from economic good times. We've been liberated from that terrible curse of doing well economically. Yay! Yay! Freedom! Make America poor again. I don't know. I'm not having a good feeling about this. Now look, as a social scientist, I will say, I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know how this is all going to work out. I don't. But I have my strong suspicions, supported by historical evidence and economic data, that it's unlikely to be good. But you never know. Right? You always have to be open-minded as a social scientist. Until we have further data and further analysis, we want to hold off a little bit in making any firm conclusions about the future. We'll have to play it as it lies. But right now, it's hard to be optimistic. And I'm a super optimistic person. But I'm finding it hard to be optimistic right now. So Tariff-O-Rama. It's going to be tough. These are tough times, people. These are going to be tough times for the foreseeable future. Trump has even acknowledged that. He said, yeah, this is going to be terrible. The economy's going to just do terribly as a result of this. But stick with it, people. I know what I'm doing. Does he? I know what I'm doing. And we're going to come out the other end doing fantastically well, better than ever before. Oh, yeah, maybe. Maybe. Although if you look at his business career, boy, there's a reason for endless skepticism about this snake oil that he's trying to sell us. I think there's reason to be skeptical of these claims. Good heavens. Okay, so here we are. All right. that's what I have for you. I'll also post for you guys, on my online students, I'm going to post for you guys a short video that talks about the ability of presidents to shape the economy. What you'll see from that video, right, and what I cover in the slides is generally, presidents don't have a big impact on the economy, right? The economy is mostly a free market economy. We're part of a global economy. To the extent that we can use monetary policy to shape the economy through interest rates, that's controlled by the Federal Reserve. Presidents don't have much influence over the Federal Reserve. It's a quasi-independent federal agency. Thank God, because presidents should not control interest rates, Democrat or Republican. That'd be bad mojo. Right? Presidents would always want to lower interest rates to hype the economy, which tends to produce inflation, which is poison. So we've kept it right under the control interest rates of the Federal Reserve, largely insulated from direct presidential pressure. Trump would like to change that. Of course he would. But I don't think he'll be successful. But who knows? We're living in interesting times. For now, he does not control the Fed. So in general, presidents don't have a lot of influence over the economy. That's absolutely true. Right? But with any rule, right, there's going to be exceptions. There are times when presidents can have more of an influence over the economy. You could say that President Joseph Biden, right, coming out of the pandemic, did help push through Congress some stimulus bills, right, money going directly to the American consumer as a way to make it through the pandemic and its negative economic consequences. You could argue that did help the American consumer, but it also maybe contributed to some hype of inflation. So there are, certain circumstances, maybe during a crisis, if a president can work well with Congress, which is a big if, where the president can make it some sort of a difference on the economy, for good and for ill. But in general, they don't have a lot of direct influence. Although, as you'll see in that video, they do say, well, tariffs would be an example where a president could have a big impact on the economy, probably negative. There is a history of that. Early to mid-19th century, early 20th century, right, where presidents were pushing tariffs hard, sometimes with congressional support, and suffering terribly as a result economically. So there's that. And now we know, right, Trump is doing this completely unilaterally, no input from Congress. Oh, I did see there is a bipartisan resolution coming out of the Senate that's saying maybe we shouldn't do this. It's mostly Democrats, but some Republicans joined in and said, yeah, this is a terrible idea, don't do it. But that's not going to go anywhere because House Republicans would never let it go anywhere. So we're seeing some symbolic pushback from Congress on Trump's tariff mania, but it's not going to make a difference. So right now Trump has the dab hand here. He's able to do whatever he wants right now on tariffs, and he's pushing them hard. They're high and they're global. And it's just massive. That's having a definite impact on our economy. It's driving down consumer sentiment about the future, and that's bad, right? What drives our economy by and large? Consumer spending. How are consumers feeling right now about the economy looking forward? They're feeling very negative because of the tariffs in large part. The stock market is dropping like a stone. Right, we already have some economic data that suggests that inflation is back on the rise. Tariffs will probably feed that. Some evidence that the labor market is softening a bit. Bad mojo in terms of economic data and the stock market. Largely influenced by Trump's tariff mania. So here you would say, at least right now. Now, what the future holds, I can't say for sure, but I can make an educated guess. Right now, Trump is having a huge impact on our economy. This is one of those exceptions to the rule that generally presidents don't have a lot of power here. Trump is exercising a lot of power now, and so far, it's been all on the negative side of the ledger. So he's having a big impact. Up till now, that impact has been largely negative. All right. So that's what I have for you guys. A little bit on the Wisconsin election and what that might mean for our politics, and a little bit on tariffs. All right. Take care, be well, and I'll see you on the other side. Thanks.